Do you ever do posts, whether it's a post on Instagram or any other, I guess, social media thing, or even if it's just like around with text and personal text threads or whatever, but do you ever post failures that you have? And then what is the response typically?
Yeah, every once in a while. So I record pretty much all of my practice throws. I have just the because of work, sometimes I'm training when my coach isn't there. So it's helpful because I can view my stuff and I can share it with him. So I see the good, bad, and the ugly recorded. Most of the time I'm posting the good stuff, but every once in a while, especially if it's like an actual flop where either I'm falling on the ground or the discus is going all sorts of ways, I'll post that too, and it's funny because I think in my mind I'm like, oh yeah, like this is Instagram. Of course I'm posting the best. Like, of course I have failures. I'm just not showing them. But I think like for the people that are like my true followers are really engaged with me, they love it. They're like, oh, this is awesome. Like you fail too. You're human. It makes them feel closer to where I am.
Mm.
But then I also get some trolls that are like, "This is horrible. I could throw so much further. Like, I can't believe you think you're good." And I'm like, "Did you read the caption? Like, this is a
Nope.
flop, and it's still probably farther than you would ever throw." Just
Yeah.
saying. But yeah.
Yeah. The guy, and I'm gonna use that gender specific thing because it's probably almost always a guy that's saying I could probably throw as good. Like the I could probably guy, that guy sucks. That guy sucks.
Yeah.
That guy is watching UFC fights and saying I could probably take that guy. Same
Yeah.
guy. Same guy.
Same
Yeah.
guy, same guy.
Yeah.
It's yeah, there
Um,
was there was one video that I posted that, got significantly more views than my normal videos and tons of comments, but one of the comments was a guy who said, "You probably didn't think that somebody who's done this before would watch this. Here's all the things you're doing wrong." And it's like an older man. And I'm like, "You know, I just finished competing at the world championships.
yeah.
And it was so funny because I do have some people that, come to bat for me and in the comments are like, she's this, why are you're so like you don't know anything, like she
Yeah.
would kick your butt, all this stuff. But it's like it really is crazy how, you know, nonchalant people will be, I'll say nonchalant behind a keyboard. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Nonchalant is a
it's
nice way of
typically
putting
men.
it. Yeah. Yeah. I bet it is. I don't know. I suppose maybe there's women out there, but it feels like such a loser guy trait, like competitive loser guy trait to do something like that. So yeah, I did this the other day because for the same reason, I think for the same reason you do it. I think so for my personal or my recovery based Instagram, which I just got on Instagram, I think like a year ago, but I was off of social media for like 8 years or something. But for that account, like I had put up, I think so. A lot of people see things that I put up, and my fear is that if they're struggling, they're going to do the same thing that I did when I was struggling, which is think that the person of success is different. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so that person is just genetically gifted differently. That person has is they're different in some way. They have better
Yeah.
opportunity, blah, 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 blah. And it's all like this. So, like when I'm 250 pounds, 90 pounds overweight, and I'm watching a 90-year-old grandma deadlift more than I could deadlift. I'm like, oh, well, in my head, in order to make that okay, I'm like, well, because she's blah, blah, and I got whatever
Right.
fill in the blank excuse to make myself feel okay as I'm eating a slice of pizza. Anyway, so now I like one of my thing is chasing failure. I'm like, I
Yeah.
have to make failure acceptable because it's necessary, right? I have to make it acceptable because the only way for me to get better is through failure. And
Yeah.
so I attempted to run 100 miles last week, and there's a myriad of reasons why I failed. And part of it was my mentality going into it. Part of it was that, like, just situationally, next time things that are pretty easy that I know I can change. Like, next time I'm going to drive myself, not be dropped off, because then I'm taking in my wife into account. Like, well, if I fall out midnight and she has to pick me up, I'm taking in all these outside factors that shouldn't be a factor. And then anyway, so long story short, I failed. And so I put it up on the Instagram. I say, I failed, I quit. And I just come to account with the way I failed. Right.
Yeah.
And I put up the inventory. Like, so if you click on it, you can read in more detail on it. And the people that were nice enough to read in it, in the most honest, sympathetic, caring way, were saying, you didn't fail. Like,
Yeah.
here's this, and like, you're still really good and you're still inspiring and blah, blah, blah. And I appreciate the sentiment, but don't take away what I earned, which was failure. I
Yeah.
earned it fair and square. I
Yeah.
earned it. And to have that removed and taken away from me is somewhat insulting, because that also removes the experience of what I've gained from the failure. And so I wasn't sure if you've had any of that, where it's people with a nice, honest sentiment. They're
Yeah.
like, but also it can come off as a little bit placating. And that's not their point. That's not their point. That's
Right.
not why they're doing
Totally.
it. But for me personally, like, as being the person, like, I had to work really hard for it. It took months of training to earn that failure. It took
Yeah.
months of little wins and learning things in order to get to that peak, and then, oof, feel that failure hard. And then to have it massaged a little bit and say, no, it's not failure because of this. I'm like, no, it's failure. Let me have it, man. Don't take that away from me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think interestingly enough, like I don't think I don't operate the same. I'm definitely
Mm,
one of those people. Like, I can totally recognize what you're saying about how you're like, no, like you're able to see the failure in the positive light.
mm,
I can't. Like,
mhm,
it hits me to my core. But I think I think we're on the same vibe, but I frame it differently. I think to
mhm,
me, when I have those failures, like the win, like, yes, I failed, but I don't take pride in the failure. I take
mm,
pride in the attempt
mhm.
and everything.
Yeah.
So it's similarly positioned. I think I'm just not in a place where I can be like, "No, let me have the failure,"
Mm,
because oh my gosh, like I just can't sit with it. When I'm like, I failed, I am so, like, just embarrassed with myself that
mhm,
I frame it differently, where it's like I can still accept, like, I fell short, I failed here, but, like, in order for me to be okay with it, I have to make sure that I come out on the other side with, like, these other wins. So I think
mm,
it's like the failure itself, I don't necessarily wear as the badge of honor, but what went into it. And then also, I am like such a huge fan of the redemption story and the underdog.
mhm,
And the more failures you have on your belt, the more of the underdog you are when you win.
mm,
And like the more of rock bottom that you've been at, the more you have for that book, for that story of like
mhm,
how you came back from it and stuff. And so it's definitely, when I do experience failure, you know, I always want to make sure that, like, if I am, and also, like, what are you failing at? I think that's the
mhm,
question, is like, what is the thing that is going to be a failure or not a failure? And I think, like, I'm scared to think about this, but as I'm getting ready to go to the Olympic trials, I could make the team, but I could also not make the team. And I'm already, like, preemptively thinking about, what if I don't make the team? How am I going to view that? If
mm,
I don't make the team, is that failure? And the way that I'm viewing it already, and like sort of training my brain to think about it, so that, because I don't want to go in thinking about failure. So the way that I'm viewing it now is, I want to go into the Olympic trials, the US Olympic trials, with all my boxes checked, so that if I take top 3, I'm qualified to go to the Olympics. That's one thing. I want to go in. I want to have a successful season leading up. and I want to do my best at the trials. And then whatever the outcome is, whether I make the team or not, I want to be proud of how I did.
Mhm.
And so I could see that similarly to you, there are times where like I've failed, and the reason that I failed was because I didn't prepare. I didn't take it seriously. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. There's things that happen that lead to failure. And I don't want to feel that because that happens. And I'm like, that's my fault. Whereas if I'm doing everything in my power to try to have a successful outcome and I fall short, that's okay because I know that I did everything I could to give myself the best opportunity. So I think that's sort of my philosophy. I'm never going to set my at least to the best that I can. I'm never going to set myself up for failure to be an option.
Mhm.
I might have a less than ideal outcome, but failure is something that I just naturally I'm like I'm not going to put myself in a position to achieve that. And so
Mhm.
I think that's like I know that's a lot of words, but hopefully that helps you understand sort of the way that I view like failure because I think it's possible and I've experienced it, but like I do everything I can to avoid failure even being a potential outcome.
Yeah, and so that last thing you said, I think we're saying a lot of the same stuff. There's a little nuance there, but like you said, I think so because I like it'd be one and so there's 2 types of failure, right? Like there's the type of
Yeah.
failure where you just don't even really try that hard. And
Yeah.
then you just expect it because there's this maybe an entitlement there or maybe you don't care enough or whatever, but or maybe you just are avoidant of challenge in general. So there's that type of failure. And then there's the type of failure where you put a lot of yourself into it and the hope to succeed is so high.
Yeah.
And then that's the type of because that's the stuff when I say it's like almost like a badge, it's like
Yes.
because that's going to be the reason why I'm going to do the next one. That's the
Right.
reason why I'm currently like, okay, which one can I plan according to our schedule this summer? Like, can I fit this one in? Can I, that's the reason why I'm doing it. So it's not because I'm like
Yeah.
okay with failure in the sense of like, good, I failed. And no, like now I need to try to get that back almost like there's a sour
Yeah.
taste there. I need to
Yeah.
climb out of it,
I
but
think we're
also,
we're
yeah,
on the same
yeah.
page.